Tonight, unpacking liberal lies, a John McCallum double shot as I look at the lies McCallum's telling on giving citizenship to terrorists and the refugee rush. It's February 25th. I'm Brian Lilley, and this is the Ezra Levant Show.
Why should others go to jail when you're the biggest carbon consumer I know?
There's 8,500 customers here, and you won't give them an answer.
You come here once a year with a sign, and you feel morally superior.
The only thing I have to say to the government about why I publish it is because it's my bloody right to do so.
Lying liberals, what can I really say? Often I try and tell you that liberals aren't just lying, that they're not incompetent, but that the crazy decisions they make, they're driven by their worldview. Today, I'm furious about the liberal decision to give citizenship back to terrorists and other changes they're making to the Citizenship Act. And the truth is that these changes, these ideas, they're incompetent. The liberals are lying about them. But at the same time, it is all driven by a worldview. One that says, don't punish terrorists, don't punish criminals, hug it out. A worldview that doesn't value national citizenship because, hey, Canada's the best hotel in the world, right? And we're all global citizens, man. Immigration Minister John McCallum tabled Bill C-6 today. The goal is to repeal the Conservatives' Bill C-24, a bill that every other media outlet will call controversial, even though the overwhelming majority of Canadians supported it, saying C-24 was the bill that allowed the government to strip the citizenship of dual citizens who'd taken up arms against Canada or carried out terrorist acts against Canada. You had to be convicted by a court. It had to be a serious offense before any of this could happen. But Liberals never liked it, even if Canadians did. A poll that we commissioned here at The Rebel showed 84% of Canadians supported the idea behind the bill. 69% strongly supported it. 15% somewhat supported it. It was overwhelming support in every region of the country. And this was a national poll of almost 1,500 Canadians conducted in early October when this was an election issue, in media story after media story tried to portray this as a draconian measure by the Conservatives to hurt people. Didn't matter. Regular Canadians supporting all parties liked this, but not the Liberal leader. He claimed it was a charter issue. He claimed this created a two-tiered citizenship and that he couldn't live with that, even though his own father stripped people of their Canadian citizenship. So on Thursday, Trudeau sent out Immigration Minister John McCallum. He tabled Bill C-6 in the House of Commons, then went before the cameras to peddle his BS.
Dual citizens were subject to revocation. And so therefore we had two classes of citizens, and we believe very strongly that there should be only one class of Canadians, that all Canadians are equal, that a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian.
Notice McCallum said certain serious crimes. He couldn't even say that this was for terrorism or for taking up arms against Canada. Then he said a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian. McCallum wants you to believe it was only those meanies, the Conservatives, that wanted to revoke citizenship. Of course, that's not the case. Since 1977, when Justin Trudeau's father, Pierre, was Prime Minister, Canada has revoked citizenship more than 50 times. 50! And we're still trying to do it. Look at this story in The Guardian. It's about Helmut Oberlander. It's a 92-year-old man who was part of a Nazi death squad. Now, Oberlander came to Canada in 1954. He hid his Nazi past, and the government of Canada found out about it eventually. They started a process to remove him and strip his citizenship in 1995. Now, you might remember that we had a Liberal government back then, and a Liberal Prime Minister in Jean Chrétien. And in fact, John McCallum even served under Chrétien. He would have been at the cabinet table where they tried to remove this old Nazi from Canada. A case that's still going on because this week, the Federal Court of Appeal sent Oberlander's case back to the federal cabinet. So does that mean they're going to drop the attempt to deport him? Give him his citizenship back because a Canadian's a Canadian is a Canadian? No. McCallum addressed the issue of stripping citizenship from old Nazis in his news conference.
If, for example, a Nazi war criminal were to arrive in Canada after the Second World War, professing to be a Roman Catholic priest, and obtained his citizenship on those grounds, I, for one, would have no hesitation to revoke that citizenship because he came into Canada and became a citizen on false pretenses.
Wow, a few things here. First off, to McCallum, he says that old Nazis should lose their citizenship because they lied to get into the country, and that's what makes it different and wrong. That's funny enough. In the same answer, it is the same answer his boss gave me during the election when I asked Justin Trudeau about this after the Monk debate. See, I guess for progressives, lying on a government form is a worse crime than blowing up a building, killing hundreds or thousands of people. Secondly, the Liberals want you to think that, well, these old Nazis and others, say like Rwandan war criminals, they're having their citizenship revoked because they lied on their application. That's what they claim, but it's not the case. These people are having their citizenship revoked for their bad actions, so don't believe the lie. It's simple to figure all this out. All of Canada's laws are published, and I can read. So I read the relevant section of the law on revoking citizenship from the Citizenship Act. Sorry about this. Bear with me. This is long but important. Under revocation for fraud, it says, Section 2 or 10.1, subsection 1. If the minister has reasonable grounds to believe that a person obtained, retained, renounced, or resumed his or her citizenship by false representation or fraud, or by knowingly concealing material circumstances with respect to a fact described in Section 34, 35, 37 of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, and that fact is described in paragraph 36, blah, blah, blah. A person's citizenship or renunciation of citizenship may be revoked only if the minister seeks a declaration in an action that the minister commences that the person has obtained, retained, renounced, or resumed his or her citizenship by false representation or fraud, or by knowingly concealing material circumstances, and the court makes such a declaration. Okay, that's long, but it says that, well, if a minister believes someone lied concealing material circumstances with respect to certain facts, then it lists off those facts. So what are those? Well, they're all detailed in the Immigration Act, and the one that counts here deals with terrorism and such. And the fact is, you don't lose your citizenship for lying or fraud, but because of what you did. And what is it that you can lose your citizenship over? From the Immigration Act. Section 35, subsection 1, a permanent resident or a foreign national is inadmissible on grounds of violating human or international rights for A, committing an act outside of Canada that constitutes an offense referred to in sections 4 to 7 of the Crimes Against Humanity and War Crimes Act. B, being a prescribed senior official in the service of a government that, in the opinion of the minister, engages or has engaged in terrorism, systematic or gross human rights violations or genocide, a war crime or a crime against humanity within the meanings of subsections 6, 3 to 5 of the Crimes Against Humanity or War Crimes Act. So you can lose your citizenship for committing terror outside of Canada, but not committing terrorist acts against Canada. Interesting, isn't it? One impact of this bill is that it will grant citizenship to a man that already lost it under the old bill. Zachariah Amara was one of the ringleaders of the Toronto 18 conspiracy. He gets his citizenship back thanks to Trudeau, McCallum, and this bill. That was a point that conservative immigration critic Michelle Rempel was not happy about as she responded to the Liberals on Thursday morning.
We're not celebrating people that commit terrorist actions against our country. And like, to put this in perspective, this isn't an esoteric academic exercise. There is somebody who has been convicted, as I said earlier, of a plot to bomb downtown Toronto, to inflict disaster on our country. And they are going to get their Zachariah Amara is going to get his citizenship back because of the Liberal government.
There is a lot that's wrong with this bill, and we'll get into more of it in the coming days. But the worst part is that the Liberals are giving a terrorist, a convicted terrorist, his citizenship back. They're lying to the public that there are no longer two classes of citizens, those that can lose citizenship and those that can't. There still are, if you commit the wrong crime. Just now, attacking Canada no longer counts as the wrong kind of crime to commit. I'm Brian Lilley. This is the Ezra Levant Show. Stick around. When we come back, we'll talk to Ontario Member of Provincial Parliament Monty McNaughton about an attempt to rein in spending under Kathleen Wynne's spendthrift ways. And then I'll take another run at John McCallum. You won't believe the lies he's telling on the refugee file. This is the Ezra Levant Show.
Want to have dinner with Faith Goldie? Grab a drink with Brian Lilley. Talk politics with Ezra. You can do it all on the Rebel Cruise. This November, join us for great debates, gourmet meals, and gorgeous scenery as we sail from Fort Lauderdale around beautiful Caribbean islands. It's an intimate week where you can really get to know your favorite Rebel personalities and meet other Rebel lovers too. Space is limited, so visit therebelcruise.ca to sign up now.
I love Alberta. I've lived here my whole life and I'm proud of it. I'm proud of our free market, pro-business, low-tax, do-it-yourself attitude. And now, I'm watching my province get destroyed. We've all had hints of the NDP's radical views in the past, but no one actually thought they'd ever run this province. Not even them. And now they are. And the worst is yet to come. I give my sad forecast for Alberta in my new ebook, The Destroyers, Rachel Notley and the NDP's War on Alberta.
Well, from the lies being told by Liberals in Ottawa to the lies, well, the problems really of the fiscal variety with Liberals in Ontario at the provincial capital, Queen's Park. They're having their budget day today, and we know one thing, taxes are going up, costs are going up for consumers, and so is the provincial debt. But one man wants to change that. Monty McNaughton is a Conservative MPP, joins me now. Monty, you have a private member's bill that you hope will be part of the solution to dealing with Ontario's fiscal woes. Tell me what it is and why you brought it forward.
Well, I've traveled across the province over the last number of weeks. I launched this Back in Black tour to come up with ideas to create jobs in Ontario, create the right conditions for private sector jobs, and come up with ideas on how to balance the budget in Ontario. Yesterday, I introduced a private member's bill to cap Ontario's debt, to bring in a debt ceiling, essentially to force governments, whether it's this Liberal government or future governments, to live within their means and not go over a certain amount of debt.
The idea of a debt ceiling is one that's in use in the United States. Would your bill bring about a similar situation where, yeah, there's a debt cap, but then every year the politicians get together and say, who wants to raise it? I do. And they all raise the debt ceiling and then they keep spending more.
Well, I think the biggest reason why I want to see a debt cap in Ontario, because I think politicians should be held accountable for the amount of debt that they're taking on behalf of our generation of people in Ontario and future generations. And I have a young daughter, and we're putting this burden on that generation of people in Ontario. And I just think it's irresponsible of politicians and governments to be kicking the can down the road, not dealing with this massive debt that's set to hit $300 billion in Ontario.
That $300 billion figure, that's something that's tough for most people to wrap their heads around. I can barely imagine $1 billion, never mind $300 billion, what that would do. But I do remember being on the Ontario side of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation website the other day, and they had it listed as $21,000 for every man, woman, and child in the province. That's a bit more of a digestible number, and one that people can sit there and say, oh, $21,000 for me, I got 2, 3, 4 people in my house. It's $80,000, $85,000 we owe. That's crazy. Do you try and break it down for people like that when you're talking to them about the size of Ontario's debt?
I do, and I think you have to bring it back in terms that everyday people in the province understand. And a $21,000 debt that each man, woman, and child is responsible for in Ontario through essentially no fault of their own because of incompetent and reckless government decisions. We do need to bring that back in terms that they understand. It's really deeply concerning for the future of this province.
Do you have much support from other parties? I mean, I can't see Kathleen Wynne getting behind this unless it was to say, all right, Monty, we voted for your bill. Now vote to increase taxes for me because we need to pay for this.
Well, and I'm sure that's the approach that the Liberals would take. We're seeing it in the budget today. There's going to be substantial tax increases, whether it's on a liter of fuel or $5 a month extra on home heating costs. This is a government that has, I've said a number of times, a spending problem, not a revenue problem. And my idea to contain the debt will focus the government, I think, on hopefully looking where they can save some money. We need to reduce the size and cost of government. It's grown substantially over the last 15 years. In fact, it's grown beyond the ability of everyday families in the province to pay for it.
But do you really think that that the Liberals see that they have a spending problem? I think they honestly believe they've got a revenue tools problem, that they haven't bought enough tools down at the Home Depot yet, and they need to find more. I mean, that's why they're coming out with the increase in the price of a bottle of wine, the cap and trade system that's going to up the price of that liter of fuel and up the cost of heating your home. These are all just ways that they're trying to find to dip into our pockets to keep spending while still driving up the debt.
Oh, you're right. They think that they need to raise taxes, but I think the small businesses that I've talked to, the individuals, the families and seniors out there have a different opinion, and they know that they're having a tough time affording life in Ontario, affording to operate their small business. I've talked to a number of manufacturers who would like to expand in the province, but they know with this $300 billion debt that unfortunately is going to be increasing. We'll see in the budget today that number is actually set to climb. They are looking at other jurisdictions to expand because they want to be in a place where a government is well run. And unfortunately, like everybody in the province, they know that taxes are going to go up and the cost of doing business in Ontario is going to get up, going to continue going up. So this bill is to put a focus on that and to have that transparent debate in the legislature on the debt and the size and cost of government.
Can you have a transparent debate? Can you have an open debate when one side just doesn't see that there's a problem? I mean, Ontario is the most indebted sub-sovereign jurisdiction in the world. You look at provinces and states, and Ontario has the biggest debt. You look at California. California has more people than all of Canada, and they have less debt than Ontario does, and they're considered broke.
Yeah, it's true. Look, the Liberals and the NDP, to that extent, have a different view of the province and where we should be going. But I think there is growing concern amongst the public where Ontario is going. And I think there was a clear message sent in the Whitby-Oshawa by-election to Kathleen Wynne and the Liberals, and Justin Trudeau tried to play a big part in that campaign as well. So when we talk about the $21,000 debt per person in Ontario, that's only the provincial portion. We know that there's a sizable federal debt, as well as some municipal debt in certain municipalities across the province.
So you add all of those up, and it becomes problematic for economic growth, for the province, for the country.
Absolutely. We need to make tough decisions in government. They're not going to be easy, but I think it's the greatest challenge of our lifetime to get a handle on this debt. Unfortunately, we've had a government over the last 15 years that's raised that debt from about $125 billion to $300 billion and growing. It is very unfortunate for your children, my child, and the future generations in Ontario.
Monty, where can people find out more about your bill? Maybe show some support if they like the idea and the cause behind it.
We launched a petition. I'd ask your viewers to go to it to help me bring this bill and move it forward. They can go to www.monte.ca. That's MONTE.ca.
All right, Monty McNaughton joining us from, it's Sarnia, Kent, Middlesex?
Lambton, Middlesex.
Lambton, Kent. I'll get it one day. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, don't go away. We're not done yet. We already told you about the problems with John McCallum's citizenship changes now. The lies he's telling you on the refugee rush You won't believe it. There's more on The Ezra Levant Show.
Looking for the perfect gift? Did you know the Rebel.media has a store? Make a statement with a t-shirt. Have your morning coffee in a Fearless Travel coffee mug. There's even an Ezra Levant bobblehead. It's a one-stop shop for the perfect gift. And don't forget to pick up something for yourself. Go to therebel.media/store to find out more.
Trudeau's been spending money on fighting climate change. We're in serious trouble if we don't get an entirely new government. If you don't protect everyone's free speech, you're going to find your own silenced at some point.
I really wish I didn't have to keep talking about John McCallum, but the man keeps making boneheaded moves, and the push to give citizenship to terrorists, that's just part of it. He also can't tell the truth when it comes to refugees. There's an old saying about politicians, you know when they're lying because their lips are moving. That's a rather cynical way of looking at things. I've never been a fan of that saying because I work around politicians all the time. I cover politics, and I have to hold out some hope that, agree with them or not, most politicians are in this for the right reasons. But I have to tell you, this Liberal government, and McCallum in particular, they're trying my patience, getting the truth out of them, the whole story, not a partial bit of truth. You know, the whole story, that seems to be a full-time job. My full-time job. I wasn't alone in being shocked last week when a senior bureaucrat working on the refugee rush said that very, very few of the refugees came from camps. I was shocked. Members of Parliament were shocked. The public was shocked. We didn't know this. We were told we needed to rush so many refugees so fast because they were living in horrible conditions in refugee camps. Well, now we've got Immigration Minister John McCallum telling the House of Commons that he and the government, they never claimed that. It's shocking. And he's going to regret saying that because time and again, that's what they have done. That's what they've said. And I'm going to lay it all out for you here. You won't believe McCallum's bald-faced lie. But first, let me play for you that clip of the official once again giving MPs the shocking news that very few came from the camps.
Yeah, can you give me a breakdown? How many from camps? And
I wouldn't be able to tell you the 21,000, how many, but very, very few came out of camps. Most of the people were already living in the countries where we are operating.
Yeah.
Okay, so here now is the exchange in the House of Commons this week between McCallum and Conservative MP Aaron O'Toole. He's asking why McCallum misled the House.
Mr. Speaker, last fall, the Minister of Immigration traveled to Lebanon to a refugee camp. So, in his own words, he said he could see the people we were helping with his own eyes. At the Za'atari camp in Jordan, he was joined by his two seatmates to left and right, where they told the refugee families Canada was there to help. But last week at the Public Safety Committee, Mr. Speaker, we heard from government officials that virtually none of the 25,000 Syrian refugees came from those camps. Why has that minister misled Canadians? And more importantly, why has he offered false hope to those families for the purposes of a photo op?
Minister of Immigration.
That is a misguided question. When we went to bring the refugees from these countries, we took lists provided by the United Nations, which were lists of the most vulnerable people in the region. We contacted those people, and many of them, thankfully, are now in Canada. We never said they were from camps. In Jordan, for example, some 75% of the refugees are outside camps. They are from the region. They are the most vulnerable, and I, for one, am very proud that almost 25,000 of them are now in Canada.
Oh, where to begin with that? Well, how about John McCallum himself? Remember back in January when we started to get stories out of the settlement agencies asking the government to slow down? They couldn't process all the refugees. They wanted the refugees to come. They just wanted them to come slower. Agencies in Vancouver, Toronto, Ottawa all asked for a pause so they could deal with the people that were already here. At that point, I asked McCallum about this in the foyer of the House of Commons. Isn't it better to slow down rather than rush people over to stay in cramped hotels? Well, guess what? He defended the government's actions by pointing to the camps.
And it is normal when refugees come to this country that they spend some time in hotels before being fully settled. But I believe we are for sure doing the right thing. And if you'd seen the refugee camps in Lebanon, as I have, and if you'd spoken to the refugees over there, and some of them when they got here, overwhelmingly, they are super happy to be here.
You know, that sounds an awful lot like he's telling Canadians that refugees in cramped hotels are better off there than they were in the camps, which might lead you to think they were coming from camps. Except we aren't bringing refugees from camps. Not very many anyway. But that's how they made it sound when McCallum joined Health Minister Jane Philpott and Defence Minister Harjit Sajjan in visiting camps last November. I've shown you this before. Here it is again, the news release that heralded their visit. It says, to provide a sense of the daily lives of refugees, ministers visited Zatari refugee camp located outside of Amman, Jordan, which is home to approximately 80,000 refugees. Ministers toured the camp and had the opportunity to speak with a large number of Syrian refugees who've been displaced for many months and in some cases, years. Oh, then Philpott made comments as McCallum looked on smiling that said, yes, the refugees Canada was going to bring in, they were from these camps.
We are partway through a visit that has been extremely valuable to us. We've had an opportunity to visit one of the largest refugee camps where many of the refugees are staying.
Okay, she didn't say all were from the camps, but she did say many. Whereas in reality, as explained by the bureaucrat, very, very few came from the camps. Have I shown you enough yet to get the picture? I have to keep repeating the truth because sometimes you've got to keep showing the truth over and over because the lie gets repeated over and over. Like saying, oh, we never said they were coming from camps. Couple more, just to drive home the point. Here's two Liberal MPs, including a guy named Justin Trudeau, referencing the camps in the House of Commons.
Many of the refugees who are arriving in Canada now, they have been in United Nations refugee camps for years. And they've already been screened by the United Nations, the Canadian Immigration, Police and Security officials.
Also this week, the first flights carrying Syrian refugees from camps in Jordan and Turkey will land on Canadian soil.
I think it's safe to say that the Liberals, including McCallum, led Canadians to believe we were rescuing people from horrible conditions in refugee camps. And I think it's safe to say that is false, completely false. Now, I was talking about this issue on radio the other day before McCallum stood up in the House and claimed they never said they were from camps. So I was talking about how we were pulling people out of safe places like apartments and homes in Beirut, Lebanon, and bringing them to Canada to warehouse them for weeks at a time in hotels when a man named Ronnie called in. Listen to his story.
I'd like to confirm what you're saying. My family owns a luxurious condo in Lebanon, in Beirut, actually. And we had a Syrian family renting from us for the last 3 years. And earlier this month, we had the father of the family call us and let us know that he was approached by the Canadian embassy and he has to, if he wants to migrate to Canada, he has to leave by the end of this month.
Yeah.
So, it is happening. It's
okay, so they're not. Your family owns a luxurious condo in Beirut.
Yes.
When I've pointed out that people are living in apartments, and it doesn't even have to be a luxurious one, I said, well, these people were living in apartments in Beirut. Oh, but Beirut, it's kind of scary there. It's very dangerous. Is that Beirut?
Far from it. Beirut is it's a fun city. It's quite alive. It's far from camps, that's for sure.
This family, if they are government-assisted refugees, will be moving into worse conditions than they have now. If they only knew what they were in for. Canada has now welcomed more than 23,000 refugees, and we cannot house them. One day we will be able to, but not now, and definitely not in an orderly fashion. At committee the other day, McCallum admitted that less than 50% are in permanent housing. That means most of them are in hotels spread across the country at high cost to us. As Aaron O'Toole said in the House, the Liberals have offered these people false hope, all for a photo op to make their leader look good. Just another sign that this is Justin Trudeau's vanity project.
So open-minded that the brains have fallen out.
What's the point that you're making?
The point that I'm making is that if you're going to propose a massive overhaul to the way the economy is developed in terms of carbon tax, cap and trade, other forms like that, it helps to have some science that is in fact settled.
We've heard you loud and clear. You can't get enough Canadian conservative news and opinion. Why not check out our blog? It's all your favorite conservative bloggers together on a page called The Megaphone. Go to therebel.media/themegaphone or click on the Megaphone menu from our main page to check it out.
Thanks for watching tonight. It's been a blast unpacking Liberal lies. I have a feeling I'll be doing more of that in the future. If you have comment on tonight's show or anything you heard here, well, it's easy to get a hold of me. It's brian@therebel.media. That's the email address. You want to tweet at me? I'm at Brian Lilley. And on Facebook, facebook.com/Brian Lilley. All very simple. When you're on Facebook, make sure you click the thumbs up, the like button. That way you get my feeds in your feed, and then you can share the information you hear from us at The Rebel with a country that desperately needs to know. Well, Jem emailed in about last night's show. He said, fantastic show. Love this segment with Dr. Lee, the economist. It destroys the finance minister and Mr. Trudeau's policies. Keep up the great work. Bill commented via Facebook on the Liberal use of the term infrastructure to pay for daycare and such. He says, somebody has to pay for those kids taking art class in college. Very true. Brian Rose via Twitter says, I wish the Liberals would stop saying they're doing everything for the middle class. It insults the middle class. I think it does, and I don't think Bill Morneau and Justin Trudeau, two men that came into great wealth through their fathers, really know what the middle class is all about. You and I do, but they themselves, they're out of touch. Well, we're out of time now. Thanks for watching. As always, remember, I'm on your side.